now a group that not a lot of people know about. I've happened to know about over the years, and actually I'm going to pay my dues to right now. I sent them in a week ago, and it came back in a canceled letter. My wife and I have been members for a long time. Called the Hebrew Free Loan Burial and Free Loan Society, and it's an interesting name. Those are my dues, guys. Thanks a lot. And we're here with Paul Terman, and I forget who was the other gentleman.
Brian Koblitz.
Brian
Koblitz.
Koblitz. And Brian, I'm going to ask you to get so close to that mic that you're always touching it. Brian Koblitz and Paul Terman are here from the Hebrew Burial and Free Loan Society. Alan, did you pick up all those words there?
Well, that to me sounds
and
like a
free loan. There's a great backstory to this that comes out of one of your novels.
Does it really? Yeah, because those two services are often in larger cities as separate organizations.
Right.
But I guess because we're dealing with a smaller town, we...
No, there's more to the story. So,
okay.
Folks, tell us about what the Hebrew Free Loan and the Burial and Free Loan Society is and how you guys got started.
Take it away, Brian.
Sure. The Hebrew Burial and Free Loan, it's actually an association.
Okay.
Not a problem.
Letters.
Got started a long time ago, back in 1899.
1899.
In New Haven.
In New Haven.
And that's the time when we had the great migration of Jews from Eastern Europe coming to places like New York, obviously the most, but and New Haven, starting there, and the old established German Jews look down their noses at people with the Schmark families who came from the Eastern Europe.
And a lot of Russian Jews.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, very large amount of that. The organization was actually the first organization. Sorry, first organization was actually, and Paul, help me out here. I can never pronounce the name.
Even with Chasadim.
Thank you.
Acts of kindness.
Acts of kindness, and that was actually the loan organization, the formation of it. The other side of it, the burial side, started roughly around the same time, and it was a very interesting history on how it began. There was a congregation, B'nai Jacob, owned large tracts of land, and they actually worked with them to find places for the poor and indigent who didn't have a place to be buried.
B'nai Jacob at the time was located, I think, around where the Walgreens is now, near Yale Haven Hospital.
Mm-hmm.
It's now in Woodbridge. One of the earlier Jewish congregations that one of the oldest to survive. Israel might be old.
Yeah, they owned the property where our cemetery in East Haven, Rocket Place, originally used to be Horse Cart Way. Interesting part of history there. And actually, one time that was part of New Haven. But there is markers in that cemetery where they actually gave a portion of that land and said, you guys can use this for the burials.
Now, who's they?
That was B'nai Jacob.
Oh, the congregation.
They owned all that land there.
Right. B'nai Jacob in the late right before the beginning of the 20th century was a congregation of Haven owned all this land where people were buried. And your association, the Free Burial and Burial.
You were burial.
The burial side of that.
Burial
Yes.
Society.
Two organizations.
Two organizations. One was to bury people working with B'nai Jacob, some of the many immigrants coming in and afford a burial plot. And that's how that got started.
Correct.
And eventually, so we were burying people in that area of B'nai Jacob, and eventually B'nai Jacob gave us a section of land that we were able to have exclusively for our burials, for the free burials.
Is that the East Haven land?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. B'nai Jacob also still had that cemetery on Whaley Avenue. Some of those huge mausoleums.
Oh, yeah.
That's the right word for it. So those people
yeah.
obviously had bucks. Those were the Germans, right?
Yeah.
So then you sent the Eastern Europeans out to East Haven.
Mm-hmm.
Sort of a parable to what happened with other forms of religion and that growth in that sector.
But the beautiful thing was that we were able to provide a burial place for people that were poor. You had a lot of poor people coming in from Eastern Europe, Russia, who couldn't afford their own burials, and we were able to give them the dignity of a Jewish burial.
So one thing that I think maybe people don't appreciate is how serious is the need today, where 100 years ago or more, people were poor. We understand that there were people, I guess, whose families weren't able to do this, and that's when your group steps in. How frequent is that today, and how many burial situations are you involved in? And when do you step in? Is it when the family needs help or when someone is utterly alone?
several people that we bury every year, and they'll either come to us and say, okay, there's no next of kin, there's nobody that can pay for this, or it could be a situation where the family is just not of sufficient means. Burials are very expensive. Burial plots are very expensive. For example, I wasn't living in this area at the time, but when I was 21 years old, both of my parents passed away within 7 months of each other.
Wow.
And
Wow, that must have
yeah.
been cataclysmic for your life.
Where was this?
So I was in South Florida at the time, and I had $5,000 to my name at the time. Thankfully, I was able to get some funding to be able to bury both of my parents, but it was.
And were they up here?
No, they South Florida and Los Angeles, respectively. So it wasn't associated with this
So
organization.
you're 21 years old, starting to be an adult. You had more money than most 21-year-olds have, but there's not enough money to bury parents. You had to go to two different parts of the country and take care of some business there.
Yeah.
Burying a parent is taking care of business. Besides not even the whole point of grieving and the year-long process, let alone the daily cottage that we do to try to go on with our lives, the actual mechanics of burying somebody is a big deal.
It was extremely difficult.
But you got help from a society that's like the society we're involved in now.
You got help both in Los Angeles and in Florida.
So I got help in Florida, and I was able to provide sufficiently for Los Angeles.
Just a thing.
So that's what triggered your interest in the Hebrew burial process?
So it started triggering my interest in cemeteries in general, actually. And I then got involved with this organization through my wife, who was interested more on the loan side. So my wife wanted to be able to give tzedakah. We say that the best form of tzedakah, of charity, charity is it's actually an interesting word, because
Because
tzedakah
it doesn't mean
means,
charity,
right?
an
It doesn't
obligation.
mean it means righteousness and
Right.
justice. Yeah,
And charity is a Greek word that is really not committed
right.
to this
But in
business.
any case, we kind of cut off Brian when he was giving
Oh,
us all
sorry.
this.
No, go ahead.
No, don't apologize. Don't apologize at all. You're answering the question. So this society started to bury immigrants, families who didn't have money for burial.
Correct.
And this society got some land in East Haven,
Correct. That was donated land.
donated land.
And the original markers are actually, as I said, still in the cemetery from back then. And they actually, and I have to go back on the notes here for a second. It was in 1909 that they actually formed the corporation. It was the True Benevolent Society. And they were later on given the full plot of land that we now currently have for the cemetery.
It's a well-kept cemetery. I've been there a bunch of times. And then, at what point did this also become a loan society?
Well, there were the two societies that were running at the same
So
time.
there's a separate society that gave loans to people. What kind of loans and how did that start?
The loans, basically at the time when you came over to this country, it was, you had to have, how do I say this correctly? You had to basically had a job to come here. So the Loan Society helped to bring immigrants over by setting them up with their own businesses.
The Loan
offering
Society
them
did that.
employment. Yeah. That was a
Because
good
a lot of
portion
it
of
was
that.
done by people, like I know my grandfather came from Semiotics, which is part of Mullen and Russell, sometimes he came to New York. And they actually had all their societies based on what area you came from.
Mm-hmm.
So he was in the Semiotic Society. I've been to his, in Staten Island, their graveyard is actually Semiotic Society section. But here it sounds like it went across different groups of Jews.
It did.
Exactly.
It was benevolent. So benevolent society gave you loans and helped. And that mean also sometimes if you lost your job or if somebody had to get medical care, you gave them loans for that.
Yes.
And how did interest work? I would assume it's the opposite concept of loan shark.
Correct.
So these are free loans. It goes back to the biblical
Oh,
principle.
no interest.
Yeah, no interest, no fees, no nothing.
So it's a gift. It's a gift
It's-
called a loan.
It's a gift called a loan. But and this goes back. It's mentioned many times in the Torah and the Bible, where it says you lend money to any of my people who is poor. You shall not be like the money lender to him. You shall not exact interest from him. And that's the principle under which we give our loans to our fellow Jews.
So Brian, when did the Loan Society start?
The Loan Society started in 1909.
So when did they merge?
It was in 1989 when they both
It
merged.
was that many years later. And I would assume it was some of the old guys and women who came from families been in New Haven a long time and seen them become more middle class in a lot of cases, and maybe the society wasn't as well known in this community as that way to put it. Didn't have as much glitz as let's raise millions of dollars to build a new palace for the JCC in Woodbridge or have gala balls and that sort of.
Yes, more or less. I mean, times have changed. As you know, the '60s, cars came about, people spread out more, so it wasn't as much of a need. It started to slow down, and I think that was the reason behind the merge.
And you're talking about smaller loans, right? You're not talking about to buy a house. You're not talking about anymore to start a business that would require getting tens of thousands of dollars. What kind of loans do people get now?
Several different types. We recently had one for a gentleman who had some medical bills he needed to get resolved. We loaned him money for that. We loaned money for people that were behind on their rent or bills.
Do you get paid back?
We've actually had a very, very, I believe, 100% success rate in being paid back.
100%.
Yes.
You don't have to get people, very short people with very dark, scary voices on the phone. You call them up and say they're coming by the door.
Well, we just, there's been some that have been late a little bit, but, patience is a big thing. You have to work with people.
Yeah, and that's typical of these types of societies that you see in other places where they'll have a 95 or 99% return rate.
Wow.
So they really are loans. They're
Think about this. You're not in the predatory lending environment we live in now, and the Consumer Finance Protection Bureau finding billions of dollars of people getting loans they could never afford that get their property taken away. We need places like Hebrew Burial Free Loan Society.
And how do you get the situations presented? Are they referred by synagogues, by rabbis, or is there a website that people go to? And speaking of which, this is thegreatgive.org, and if you want to support the Hebrew Free Loan and Burial Society,
Burial Free Loans Association.
Association.
But you know what?
Type in any of these.
You don't need society. Just Hebrew
it's the only Hebrew
Burial
loan.
and Free Loan. I love the name. There's something historic about it. That you talk about the roots of what you are when you're doing the work today. Talk about the work you do today. Now you keep the cemetery up, right? That cemetery's in nice shape.
It is. It's we've had a lot of work we put into the cemetery in the past couple of years. We had a big cleanup about 3 years ago.
You got another one coming up, right?
We do.
Absolutely do. Yeah, we have one
Tell us
coming
about
up on May 14th from noon to 5 o'clock. Come for any of the time that you want.
So how do people get in touch? Is there a website?
So yeah,
Tell us how to do that.
We have a website. It's hbflanh.org. So that stands for Hebrew Burial Free Loan Association Newhaven.org.
Wouldn't it be easy to go to Google and just put in Hebrew Burial Free Loan?
Yeah,
Get
we'll
your website.
come up.
We will be fine.
So
I'm glad you guys are still around. The dues are not steep. I know my wife and I both are dues paying members, and total tickets at $10 a year.
yeah, it's
You
$5.
you guys are stewards.
Somebody
you guys are
should
stewards.
solicit me.
Please join us.
Please,
That's
you're
right.
welcome to join.
You know what am I?
So,
No,
wait, we didn't have them sing their song.
Oh, they
Oh
haven't.
my God, the time's running out.
Okay, so we actually don't have a song or a poem. What we have is a rabbinic statement, right?
That's fine.
So we have a statement from Maimonides, Rambam.
There's also a doctor.
Who's also a doctor. And in his Laws of Charity, he says that there are 8 levels of charity, each greater than the other. The greatest level, above which there is no greater, is to strengthen the hand of the fellow Jew by endowing him with a gift or a loan, or entering into a partnership with him, or finding employment for him, in order to strengthen his hand until he no longer be dependent upon others. And regarding this it is said, you shall strengthen the stranger, and he who lives among you, and he shall live with you, as to say, strengthen him so that he will not fall and be needy.
Well, had you not brought your jingle, your poem, when I looked at the list and I knew you were coming, it put me in mind of the story that I was going to tell if you didn't have your own material. But one of the things I remember most from Hebrew school is the rabbinical discussion. Paul, I don't know if you've come across this, but the rabbis are asking what is superior to give tzedakah, to give money as charity, or to do gamilut chasadim, which is the doing of good deeds. And so they go back and forth, these guys, and the concluding proof to show the superiority of the doing of actual good deeds is one of the rabbis says, well, check out the Torah. The very first act in the Torah is that God clothed the naked Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, which is the doing of good deeds. And the very last act of the Torah is God buried Moses in Transjordan. So that's definitive proof. It covers both ends of the
So at both ends, our listeners can do the tzedakah. You can go to thegreatgift.org and put in Hebrew burial and free loan, and then they can do the Gemilut Chasidim. You can do the good deeds, which is continue to keep up the graveyard, keep the free loans going. Very quickly before you leave, because you have another group coming in, tell me who you guys are and how you got involved in this. Again, here's a moving story about your parents, Brian.
Okay, my mother was the on the board at the time, and had said, "I'd like you to join this group." I joined the group and the organization to help out, and one of the reasons I joined was they wanted to get a website started. This was about 5-6 years ago, and we began the process, and subsequently led to my being put on the board. And today I'm serving as the president of the organization.
Right. And Paul, you're a young person for Jewish Community Organization. The youth group usually starts at 50. You're a really young for the youth group with Jewish Community Organization.
Well, like I said, my wife, who's been a long-time resident of New Haven, was a member of this organization, interested in the loan side, saying that is the ultimate form of charity, is giving the loans. And I've had this interest in cemetery work and being able to help people in that fashion. And so when we got married about a year ago, she said, "Hey, join this organization. It sounds like it's great."
All right. Well, thank you very much, guys, from the Hebrew Burial and Free Loan Society. Keep up the good work.
Thank you so much.
And everybody, we'd like you to go to thegreatgift.org, put in Hebrew Burial and Free Loan Society. We're going to be back in 3 minutes with another great group. We're asking to give money here on WNHH's Great Give Radiothon Videothon. And we're going to go to the Afro-Semitic Experience as we take the break. We'll do a little soul music here, playing Nefesh.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
It's fun.
Great.
Finally, I had a chance to tell my story.
Oh, no, that was a great story. It covers
Well,
both of our ends, right? So
My
It
last
covers
name?
both your
Yeah.
ends, and it's actually in the morning in the Shacharit service.
Yeah.
They quote that. I thought that was one of the great stories.
Thanks again.
Hey, guys, that was great. Thank you. You guys want to come in?